The Big Bang Theory is the creation myth of cosmologists. It is based on scientific evidence that shows that the galaxies are moving away from each other. Scientists were all but certain that the Big Bang Theory is correct, but they couldn't prove it until NASA launched into space the Cosmic Background Explorer satellite, COBE, to look at clouds of microwave radiation that are almost as old as time itself. The satellite enabled scientists to see how the universe was evolving when it was only 300,000 years old. COBE enabled scientists to verify the Big Bang Theory. Confirmation of the Big Bang Theory is a great breakthrough for science, but not for religion. What scientists have done is to confirm the creation myths of Hindu and Jewish mystics of ages past. Like today's cosmologists, Jewish mystics of the 13th century describe creation from a time when there was nothing. God, as revealed in the Bible, was not yet even manifest. The term they used to describe God prior to creation was Ein Sof. Write it down. It is spelled in two words, E-I-N, then S-O-F. Ein Sof. This means without end. Ein Sof is usually translated as the infinite. Ein Sof is the ultimate reality, unmanifest, incomprehensible, imperceptible, and indescribable. It is the divine nothingness. Ein Sof is the first cause. The writings of Jewish mystics describe how the infinite created the universe from nothing, starting with a single point of light. All creation emanated or exploded from that point. A 14th century Kabbalist text said, Ein Sof is not hinted at in the Torah, the prophets, the writings, or the words of our rabbis. May their memory be a blessing. But the masters of service, that is, the Kabbalists, have received a little hint of it. Even though Ein Sof is unknowable, Kabbalists had a lot to say about it. Kabbalists called Ein Sof the cause of all causes and the root of all roots. Doesn't that sound like the great Tao? Some conceived of Ein Sof as the primal will, or the will of all wills. Others said that Ein Sof was pure thought, or the thought which has no end or finality. Ein Sof is often thought of as nothing or nothingness, because it is not manifest in the manifest cosmos. So absolute is the nothingness that Ein Sof had to first create the God of Genesis before the creation could begin. I'm going to say that again so you can write it down. So absolute is the nothingness that Ein Sof, the unknowable, incomprehensible, had to first create the God of Genesis before the creation could begin. Where have you ever heard that concept? Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Rabbi Moses de Leon. He was born about 1240 in Leon, Spain, and he died in 1305. Rabbi Moses de Leon is the mystic genius who authored the Zohar, known as the Book of Splendor. He was and is the servant of the Blessed Holy One. Rabbi Moses de Leon, wherever you are, we bow to the light within your heart. Let's give Rabbi Moses a hand. The Zohar is an encyclopedia of Kabbalistic thought. Rabbi Arthur Green explains, the Zohar must be viewed as a great compendium of all the Kabbalistic thought that had come before it, reworked and integrated into the author's own all-embracing poetic imagination. Ideas contained in bare hints or clumsy expressions in the generations before him now spring forth full-blown, as it were, as a part of the ancient wisdom. A pseudepigraphical work, the Zohar is attributed to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, a 2nd century mystic. Many traditional Kabbalists think the Zohar is indeed a 2nd century work. But through painstaking literary investigation, Gershom Scholem demonstrated that the Zohar was indeed written by Moses de Leon. While scholars are virtually certain that de Leon wrote the Zohar, many of them have wondered whether he had help from higher sources. Rabbi Arthur Green says, one could reasonably believe the author had felt himself possessed by a spirit other than his own as he was writing it. Could de Leon have felt that Rabbi Shimon was speaking through him, that he was the mere vessel the ancient sage had chosen for the revelation of his secrets? Green also wonders whether de Leon saw himself as the reincarnation of Rabbi Shimon. Daniel Matt says, parts of the Zohar may have been written by automatic writing. He also says certain passages in the Zohar are anonymous and appear as utterances of a heavenly voice. From about 1500 to 1800, the Zohar had canonical or near canonical status. According to Charles Ponce, author of the book called Kabbalah, for many centuries it ranked beside the Talmud and the Bible in importance. Today, scholars agree that Moses de Leon was one of the most important figures in the development of the Kabbalah. Therefore, it gives me great joy to introduce the second mystic genius of the Kabbalah, Rabbi Isaac Luria. Isaac Luria. Rabbi Luria was a true servant of the Blessed Holy One even before he was born in Jerusalem in 1534. Rabbi Luria was known as the Ari, an acronym which stands for the Divine Rabbi Isaac. Rabbi Isaac, wherever you are, we bow to the light of Tiferet within you. There are many legends about Rabbi Isaac, the Ari. According to Pearl Epstein, before the Ari's birth, his father was visited by the prophet Elijah, who announced, "Through him shall be revealed the teachings of the Kabbalah to the world." He was quickly recognized as a prodigy in the study of the Talmud. Luria was 8 when his father died and his family moved to Cairo. When he was a young man, he obtained a copy of the Zohar and began a multi-year study of the book. When he was not as successful in comprehending its contents as he had originally hoped, Luria set himself on an ascetic course prescribed for him by what he called a heavenly impetus. Retreating in solitude to a small cottage on the banks of the Nile, he spent 5 days alone in constant study and meditation, returning to his family in the city for the Sabbath. Prayer, fasting, and the Zohar remained his only companions for 2 years, at the end of which the prophet Elijah appeared in a vision to initiate him personally. According to legend, Elijah commanded Luria to go to the land of Israel. He arrived in the city of Tzfat. You might as well write this down. It is spelled S-A-F-E-D, but it's pronounced Tzfat. He arrived in the city of Tzfat in 1570. At that time, Tzfat was the home of a thriving spiritual community. According to Pearl Epstein, Tzfat is a natural mystic's retreat, an ethereal town that could just as well have been a tiny Tibetan enclave or the setting for an isolated monastery in the Himalayan foothills, a Jewish Shangri-La. The leading Kabbalists of the time were living in Tzfat. They quickly recognized Rabbi Luria as their teacher. He taught orally in Tzfat for just 22 months and then died suddenly in 1572 at the age of 38. But the writings of his disciples, which summarize his work, cover thousands of pages. Rabbi Luria taught his disciples to cultivate joy and avoid anger. Lawrence Fine, a professor of religious studies, said that according to Rabbi Luria, the joy of performing God's will ought to be regarded as greater than all material wealth. Rabbi Luria was particularly concerned about avoiding the sin of anger. He said that while other sins harm the limbs of the soul, the sin of anger harms the entire soul. Anger also causes the highest level of the soul to leave a person, and that when angry, a person is filled with a strange God. The years of my life have been rich in receiving much instruction from El Morya, as I have been an observer of life and people. I have seen before my very eyes people go into a rage, and in a single rage, literally extinguish the divine spark. That is how grave is the potential for anger in anyone. I have seen individuals go into a rage of anger and lose a portion of the soul, and by repetition over a lifetime, lose their entire soul. Anger is the absolute perversion of the Godhead. Anger can be aggravated and increased by wrong diet, by eating too much meat, too much acidic foods, by a toxic liver. Whatever the cause, there is not an exception. Those who allow themselves to become enraged forfeit some portion of their God identity. I suggest that you modify your diets, consider the macrobiotic diet, and recognize that, above all things, you must be a vessel of divine love and never allow anger to become a vortex that overflows the citadel of your being. Now let us consider the Sphirot. Remember, the Sphirot are the vessels. That may be a new name you haven't written down. Vessels, or chalices, that make up the tree of life. Kabbalists have used many synonyms for the Sphirot, including lights, names, stages, crowns, mirrors, sources, and the inner faces of God. The inner faces of God. Rabbi Moses Luzzatto, an 18th century Kabbalist, thought of the Sphirot as transformers that decreased the intensity of the light of Ein Sof. He wrote, "The 10 Sphirot, emanations, act as veils." It's another name for Sphirot, veils. 10 stages, vessels, or degrees, which the Creator issued to serve as channels through which his bounty might be transmitted to man, restraining that bounty to the extent that the worlds shall not disappear because of the too great abundance of light, yet providing a sufficient amount of it to ensure their continued existence. He therefore made 10 vessels in order that the bounty in traversing them would become so densified that the lower creations could bear it. This is precisely the teaching of the Ascended Masters, which I have taught for 30 years, without the knowledge of the Kabbalah. The Blessed Ascended Master El Morya, blessed be his name, showed me the 12 hierarchies of the sun and described them to me as step-down transformers. He said their function is to step down the intensity of the light of the great central sun for the lesser evolutions in the far-flung worlds, that they might drink of the cosmic communion cup without being consumed by the unmitigated light of the sun. Some Kabbalists conceived of the Sphirot as vessels or instruments through which Ein Sof acts. This is a fact. Other Kabbalists thought of the Sphirot as the essence of Ein Sof. This too is fact. According to David Ariel, they adopted this position in order to avoid suggesting that we pray to Sphirot that are different than God. Moses Cordovero thought the Sphirot were God's essence and God's instruments at the same time. You can see that many individuals, many mystics, have put a lot of attention on the Sphirot to define and refine their own conception and hence receptivity to these 10 focuses of God. In either case, Ariel says, the Sphirot are the bridge across the abyss, the connective tissue. Another word, the connective tissue between the infinite God and the finite world. Aren't you glad God made the Sphirot? I'll tell you how I experience the Sphirot. I experience them directly as vortices of living fire. I visualize each of these 10 transformers as guarded by resplendent seraphim who are of the great central sun. These seraphim abide in the presence of God. They are the keepers of the flame of the science of Kabbalah, outpictured in the tree of life. And they are joined by flaming cherubim who guard the way of the door of Malchut. I'll tell you what Malchut is in a little while. They form concentric rings of fire, ring upon ring, as they temper the solar wind to the shorn lambs of God on earth and in other systems of worlds. Wherever God and his sons and daughters meet at the point of Tiferet, there is the tree of life. Now, lest I get ahead of my story, let us look at the chart of the I am that I am. This chart will tell you just how you correspond to the I am that I am, the Son of God, and the vessels or vortices that are called the Sphirot. Kabbalists made diagrams of the structure of creation as it progressed from Ein Sof down through the Sphirot. A number of different patterns appeared. The most common diagram, which you see on the screen, is called the Tree of Life. Now we look at the chart of your divine self. The upper figure is the I am that I am, whom you address as your beloved I am presence. The I am presence is God's presence individualized for you and for every son and daughter of God. It is surrounded by 7 spheres of light that make up the body of first cause, or the causal body. The middle figure is the only begotten Son of the Father, Mother God. This is your inner Christ, who mediates between you and the God of Israel, the I am that I am. Jeremiah beheld this mediator in glory and called him the Lord our righteousness. For the Blessed One divides the way between light and darkness, good and evil. This mediator is the voice of conscience. that speaks in the precincts of your heart and soul. Because the Son of God is the light emanation of God, we call him Christ. Christ comes from the Greek Christos, which translates the anointed. In other words, the one who is anointed with the light of Yud, He, Vav, He. And that is the Hebrew pronouncement of the word, I am that I am. The only begotten Son of God is the universal Christ. That Christ is individualized in the Christ figure shown on the chart, the middle figure. It is individualized for you and me and every son and daughter of God. The Rabbi, Jesus of Nazareth, was the incarnation of that Christ, but he never claimed a unique or exclusive sonship. Rather, he taught that every son and daughter of God must become one with the Christ as he had. He came to show the way of the restoration of the soul to the plane of the Son, called Tiferet in the Kabbalah. He told his disciples, "He that will drink from the same fount of the universal Christ from which I have drunk shall be as I am." The mediator is called the Holy Christ Self. The lower figure that you see in the chart consists of the soul, clothed in the garments of the four lower bodies. What we understand in this chart, which we also call the tree of life, even as the chart of the Kabbalah is called the tree of life, is the point of light that is I am that I am, that is the point of the release of light, of Ein Sof. That is the highest manifestation of light. It is written in the Old Testament, no man can see God and live. Mark Prophet said that meant no man can see God and still live as man. If he survives the experience, he will be God in manifestation. So is the power of the transforming light. So we see this is the presence of absolute God in the I am that I am. We are not ready to stand in that presence, but we are getting ready, right? Yes. We are getting very ready, and as we get ready, that presence draws closer and closer to us until the day and the hour comes when we are called for that union with that God. So this is what the Kabbalists saw. They saw the Sphirot as stepping down the light of the Absolute. So the Absolute God and the human have no contact except through the mediator who is the Son of God, who is Tiferet in the Kabbalah. Jewish mysticism acknowledges Tiferet as the Son of God, and they call him the Son of God. They simply do not call him Jesus Christ. They call him simply the Son of God. So we will continue with our understanding that the I am that I am is stepped down to the level of the Christ, but now we will understand that there are stages and degrees of this stepping down process. And from the level of Tiferet, that Son of God, there is a further stepping down until you and I in this octave can receive that exact portion of light that we are able to live with and comfortably contain within our four lower bodies and our chakras and every organ and cell. As you use the violet flame and invoke that power of God for transmutation, and you clear the debris by right diet, and you purify and purge the four lower bodies, little by little, day by day, you can contain more of that light. So the mediator of the Christ is the regulator, constantly regulating. So if you get into an angry mood or a discordant mood, your Holy Christ Self is up there turning the keys and fooling with the switches to make sure that you don't get any more energy that you can misqualify. Because your Holy Christ Self is doing you a favor The more energy you have and the more energy you misqualify, the more karma you make. So the Holy Christ Self is the mediator protecting you. So the Holy Christ Self has been doing that for a long time. And we can see in the bodies of people today how many people are yearning for greater strength, greater vigor, greater energy to do what they want to do. And you'll have that greater strength and energy when you obey the laws of God, bank the fires of the heart, and use all the energy at your disposal for good works. When your Holy Christ Self and your I Am Presence can trust you to be consistent and constant, constantly harmonious, unmoved, using the commanding presence of Jesus, peace, be still, and know that the I Am that is God is in me. When you can be counted on not to be moved, you will have access to the Infinite One. It's a great goal to work for, and you can achieve some of it every day. Gain ground and keep it. Never a backward step, right? The Big Bang applies to the origin of the physical universe, but that's only the beginning, or should I say the ending. Before the physical universe was born, there was a Big Bang that created the spiritual universe. Let's talk about the Big Bang as it applies to the I Am Presence and to the avatars and the holy ones of God, the founders and key figures of the world's major religions, to name a few. Lord Krishna, the Vedic seers, Enoch, Abraham, Melchizedek, Moses, Zarathustra, the Yellow Emperor, Lao Tzu, Confucius, Gautama Buddha, Padma, Sambhava, Elijah, Elisha, John the Baptist and Jesus Christ, John the Beloved, the Apostle Paul, and Mohammed. Not only are they among the great mystics of all time, but every one of these beings initiated a spiritual cosmos. This is the great revelation that beloved El Morya gave to me yesterday. Each one of these individuals and others like them is the Big Bang. And here's how. When they came forth into physical manifestation, there was an explosion of light that has never ceased. Just as the universe has never ceased to expand, their light has never ceased to ripple out in concentric rings. And that is what the God-man, or the God-womb-man, who has attained mystical union with God, brings to a planet. Such souls are spiritual novas. The reason that we literally worship these beings is because each one is a sun center, a son of the great central sun. Such individuals are either born with or do attain in life the full manifestation incarnate in them, not only of the Christ self, but of the I Am that I am. So they are a sun center. They are the center of their mighty I Am presence. And they are a son, S-O-N, of the great central sun, S-U-N. That means each one is a sun. Every one of them is an S-U-N of the great central sun, and also a sun, and S-O-N of the sun. And that sun that is God in the heart of the universe.
You're watching Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and founder of Summit University. Summit University is located at the beautiful Royal Teton Ranch in Park County, Montana, just north of Yellowstone National Park. If you'd like more information, call 800-323-5228. That's 800-323-5228.
Why do we give mantras invoking the name and the being of Shiva or Krishna or Gautama Buddha or Jesus Christ? We pray to them because they are a living God reality. They are the manifestation of God. And as long as the universe is expanding, their rings of light of their causal body are expanding too. This is why it is such a tremendous experience to give the mantras to these truly God-realized beings, east or west. We tie into the original point of light, of the avatar's release of light, and to every photon of light that has gone forth from them in the present hour when we give a mantra that embodies their name. This is what the ashram rituals are all about. As we are tied together by this great web of light, the great Antakarana of the cosmos, and when we give a mantra, it quivers the whole Antakarana. And everywhere in cosmos where there is one of these beings who are suns in themselves, they amplify. They're not step-down transformers, they're step-up transformers. Actually, they do both. But they're stepping up our mantra and giving it back to us, multiplied by the power of their causal body. This is the meaning of the entire spirit of the Great White Brotherhood. When we say that in every decree, we're talking about the spirit united of all these beings who are the sons, and then of all of us who are their chelas, their disciples. And we are tied to their hearts, not by our attainment, but by their attainment and sponsorship. And they keep us tied because we keep striving to be their true disciples day by day. So of course, when you are tied to the sun, you have the greatest opportunity to become the sun. And that's the great mystery of Hinduism itself, the recognition of God in manifestation. When we give mantras to these beings of light, through them we are immediately connected to the great central sun. That is the mystery of mysticism. That's why their names are sacred to us. We understand the term worship in connection with these beings because we are not worshiping idols. We are not worshiping form. We affirm with them, in them, and through them, I and my Father are one. I and my mother are one. The first sphira, remember this is the singular noun for sphirot, is called Keter. It's spelled K-E-T-E-R, pronounced Keter. It means crown. As you can see on the slide, Keter is the highest sphira on the tree of life. Keter is co-eternal with and identical or nearly identical to Ein Sof. Like Ein Sof, Keter was conceived of as nothing, even as it was conceived of as will. Some Kabbalists said that Keter cannot be known because of its proximity to Ein Sof. According to a 13th century Kabbalistic text, supernal Keter is a world hidden unto itself. David Ariel writes, Keter is the more active representation of God's will. It cannot be known except during the rare moment when God chose to reveal himself as Eya, Asher, Eya. How many know what that means? Eya, Asher, Eya. Say it with me. Eya, Asher, Eya. Eya, Asher, Eya. Eya, Asher, Eya. It just makes you smile from ear to ear the more you say it. It means I am that I am. I am who I am. I am that I am. I am what I am. I am that I am. I am who I am. I am what I am. In the Zohar, the manifestation of the infinite will is Keter. And that will in Keter is called the Holy Ancient One. According to Rabbi Green, Keter is the catalyst of all being, but not yet a thing in itself. Kabbalistic history is filled with ongoing debate as to the nature of Keter and its relationship to Ein Sof. This debate, says Rabbi Green, is in some ways reminiscent of the arguments about the eternity of the second person in early Christianity. This seems to be the Zohar's position. Keter is eternally present within Ein Sof, but is not to be identified with it. You can figure that one out. A 13th century hymn to Keter said, "Everything is in it, for the internal powers of the Sphirot are in it." This is like saying we're all in the bosom of Abraham, so all of the other 9 Sphirot are contained within Keter. The constitution of everything is in Keter. It is called indifferent unity. Indifferent unity. That's like the Buddhist term, undifferentiated suchness. You just have to contemplate those words, and eventually they start percolating. Charles Pensée, author of a book called Kabbalah, says Keter contains the plan for the entire universe. Each sphera has a name of God associated with it. The reason for this, is explained by Gershom Scholem, is that the Sphirot were conceived of as the progressive manifestation of the names of God. I think you understand that by now, right? The name of God associated with Keter is Eya Asher Eya, I am that I am. There is a correlation between the tree of life and the chart of your divine self. As you see on the screen, Keter, the crown, correlates to the I am presence. I have instructed our artists, according to Almoria's instruction, of the placement of the tree of life of the Kabbalah over the tree of life of the chart of the I am presence. So I will explain to you the relationship of each of the 10 as we proceed. All emanation flows from Keter to the other Sphirot. There were various explanations for how that occurred. Most Kabbalists saw emanation as a process of overflow from Ein Sof, which by nature is effulgent. When the essence of Ein Sof overflowed and expanded outward, the chalices of the Sphirot were there to receive it. Can't you see all these wonderful chalices in a great fountain in Rome where the waters are coming down and they go into the first Sphirot and then the next levels and the next levels, and the fountains keep going? I'm sure you've all seen a fountain like that, and I think we all have the memory of having seen such fountains on Atlantis. And for me, that is their symbology, the transfer of the light of the I am that I am. When the essence of Ein Sof overflowed and expanded outward, the chalices of the Sphirot were there to receive it. A 13th century Kabbalistic text said, Keter receives from the root, and now you know that the root is Ein Sof, without any interruption, in a subtle whisper. It emanates and pours forth from its reservoir upon the other crowns or Sphirot, which are always close to its emanation. The Zohar described emanation proceeding from a complex pattern of interaction between Ein Sof and Keter. You might say that Ein Sof is the sun behind the sun of your mighty I am presence. David Ariel explains, Ein Sof emanates its essence upon Keter and activates it. Without Ein Sof, Keter, or the I am presence, wouldn't be activated. Keter, in turn, turns back to Ein Sof to draw down further essence, thereby linking them together. So Ein Sof gives to Keter, then Keter reflects back to Ein Sof. So this is forming a linkage. Likewise, we form our linkage to God. God gives to us, we give back to him. Now this is very interesting. Listen closely. As Keter turns back to reflect its light toward Ein Sof, its source, it strikes a barrier, a curtain. Why? Because Keter is of a lower vibration than Ein Sof. So it cannot cross that barrier like the veil that hung between the Holy of Holies of the high priest and the outer court. So Keter cannot get back inside of Ein Sof. It strikes a barrier, a curtain, that stands between it now and Ein Sof. The barrier then reflects the light of Keter back to it. Did you get that? And creates the second sphera. Ein Sof gives light to Keter, Keter gives it back to Ein Sof, strikes the curtain throws it back and creates a new sphera. The process of emanation and reflection creates the 10 sphirot. Some Kabbalists saw emanation as a process in which Ein Sof voluntarily limited its own infinity in order to create the finite world. Moses Luzzatto wrote, "When there arose in the Creator's most pure and simple will the desire to manifest creation, which was to receive his light in measured and limited proportion, he emanated his light in a successive pattern of descending degrees until the present creation came into being. He did this both by concealing his infinite, immeasurable light and by concurrently extending it and sending it forth. By this process of extension, which signifies delimitation, the Sphirot came into being." David Ariel says that Kabbalists explain the process of limitation by drawing an analogy to the sun. He writes, "The radiant light of the sun shines endlessly due to its great power and brilliance. Nothing could be seen, however, unless the unbridled light of the sun is restricted, allowing for the emergence of shapes, contours, and details. In the same manner, the radiance of Ein Sof must be contracted and limited through the emanation of Keter, a channeling of the infinite mind and will into the more defined thought and will. Keter is the means by which the infinite God makes all other creations possible. It is the transition between God's infinity and the finite world." Now I will give you the names for the 9 Sphirot. Those of you who can see a screen will see the names written. This is how they are pronounced. These 9 Sphirot emanate from Keter. Chokhmah, wisdom. Binah, understanding. Chesed, love. Gevurah, power. Tiferet, beauty. Netzach, triumph. Hod, majesty. Yesod, foundation. And Malchut, kingdom. Malchut is also known as Shekinah, or the presence of God. In Kabbalah, Shekinah is the feminine aspect of God. Malchut, Shekinah, receives and absorbs the qualities of the other Sphirot. It is the vessel through which the other Sphirot act. Malchut is the most accessible aspect of God's being. Now, if you will look at the chart on the screen, you will see Malchut is the very bottom. Now, if we can have the tree of life of the Zohar superimposed on the chart of the presence, I will show you the meaning of Malchut. According to David Ariel, this Sphirah is the one that is most frequently known to man and the one most aimed at in prayer. Now you see that I have located it precisely at the base of the spine chakra of the lower figure in the chart. Malchut is feminine, is the Divine Mother, and is the one who affirms, I am the open door which no man can shut. And the meaning of that statement in the book of Revelation is, no man can shut the door to the Divine Mother except you, the individual. That door will not be closed by God. It can only be closed by you maintaining a wrong vibration. So we will come back to an analysis of the other sphirot, but I wanted you to see that. And the name that I've been referring to as Tiferet is in the very center, midpoint between the top, Keter, and Malchut at the bottom. And that is Tiferet, the Son of God. Malchut is the funnel through which the divine essence, carried along through the vessels of the sphirot, overflows upon man and the world. By the sacred fire of the Divine Mother raised up equally in all the 7 chakras, we are blazing sun centers of the 7 rays, sending forth that light to the 7 planes of the world. Every one of your chakras is like a sphira. It has a different vibration, it is in a different plane of consciousness, it is for a different function, and we learn in Hinduism the meaning of this by the numbers of the petals that are on that chakra. The numbers of the petals determine its frequency of vibration. So our chakras are step-down transformers for our 4 lower bodies and for the entire earth body. So the energy that energizes the 7 chakras comes from Keter, the mighty I Am Presence at the top of the tree of life, and from Malchut, the Divine Mother, at the bottom of the chart. When you have the flow descending and ascending, you have the union of these 2 forces in your body temple, and that should be your goal in life. This overflow through Malchut creates the worlds below God and gives substance and sustenance to humanity. Jesus Christ made a statement which comes clear to us in its mystical sense at this time. You can be sure that Jesus knew the profound teachings of the Kabbalah and that he taught them to his innermost circle. He said, "Except ye eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of God, you have no life in you." He said, "Without me, you can do nothing." Jesus had total identification with the Son of God. He was the Word incarnate. He was the incarnation of the I Am that I Am. He was the incarnation of the Son of God, Tiferet. And he was the embodiment of the Divine Mother. He had full attainment on all of these levels. So when Jesus says me, he's not talking about the human Jesus, although the divine is fully integrated with that human. He is talking about the light that is flowing through him. And the me he is talking about is the same God that is in himself and that is in you and me. Without this light ascending and descending, you can do nothing, because it is the only energy source you have, not the food you eat. That's why he said man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. When you look at all those God manifestations in the avatars, and you say mantras to them, you are living by the word that proceeds out of their mouth. That's what we live by. So we need to understand where the flame comes from, how it is qualified by God for us in these 7 planes of being, and what we must do to hold the balance for it, and then become sun centers ourselves to direct that light to all. That is our goal as mystics. By means of this emanation, which is channeled across the abyss, from God to man through this sphera, individuals are able to retrace the path to God and bridge the abyss. We're talking about Malchut, the lowest one on the chart. The abyss. By means of Malchut, who is the divine feminine, we cross the abyss of the astral plane of death and hell. That is why it is so essential that we acquaint now ourselves with the Divine Mother and become her devotee and her manifestation. Because when we are one with the Divine Mother, we cross the abyss, we help others to cross the abyss. Knowledge of how God conveys his essence to the world through Malchut provides the key to unraveling the mystery of how one can bridge the abyss. To paraphrase the Neoplatonist Plotinus, everything comes from the one, and everything returns to the one. If Malchut, or shall we say God as Malchut, had not descended to that level, to the very base of the spine as the mother chakra, we could not have taken incarnation and have the potential for God realization. This is the tremendous mercy of God to allow the Divine Mother to descend to that level. And so her wellspring is springing up within us continually. According to Gershom Scholem, the term kingdom refers to God's dominion or power in the world. As I said earlier, Malchut receives and absorbs the qualities of the other Sfirot. It is the vessel through which the others act. It reflects all aspects of divinity. As all aspects come from Keter, so all aspects are reflected back into the world and to Keter through the Divine Mother. This is what makes me so profoundly sad about Protestantism, that the Mother is nowhere present. And the devotion, the veneration to the Blessed Mother of Jesus is not taught. There's no real understanding of the Divine Mother, much less a consideration of our great need for her. Recently, I was lecturing at a Rotary Club in Montana, and I spoke about the tremendous need for the Divine Mother in the person of the Mother of Jesus in our society at the time when women are having abortions, destroying their young, when women are being raped, when our children are not receiving a proper education, when the government and the economy are falling apart. These are all the provinces of the Divine Mother, Malchut. When health care is becoming so expensive as to almost bankrupt a nation, and no one can figure out how to extend health care to everyone. All these things are the functions of the Divine Mother coming forth from the white sphere and the fourth ray of the base chakra. When you exclude the Divine Mother, you are excluding that wellspring of life. I don't know how the world is going to solve its problems if the whole world does not become a devotee of the Divine Mother in this age. According to Gershom Scholem, God reaches his complete individuation through his manifestation in Malchut. Here he is called I. This conception is summed up in the common statement that through the process of emanation, nothingness, Keter, changes into I, personhood. We go from the impersonal impersonality of God, as Saint Germain charted this, at the very top on the north side, to the personal personality. Keter, the absolute impersonal. Malchut, the absolute personal. Malchut is known as the daughter of the king. She is the bride, the mother, and she is the entire community of Yisrael. As I was saying, the entire body of God. This mother manifests through the whole body of God of the cosmos. Mother is community.
For more information on the mystical paths of the world's religions, call toll-free 1-800-323-5228. The preceding program was presented by Summit University, Box A, Livingston, Montana, 59047 1390. If you'd like to know more, call this number or write this address.